welcome to Hopefully Here. Super stoked to have you. I'm going to do something different for this video, and that is I'm going to look at the nominees for the best book of 2023, the Goodreads Choice Awards. I have never, ever paid attention to the Goodreads Choice Awards. I don't have a Goodreads account. It's just not something that I have found myself gravitating towards. But I'm curious this year because I have found myself to be kind of let down by book prizes this year. The Booker did not go well. The International Booker wasn't great. The book that just won the Scotiabank Giller Prize was a book that I DNF'd. I haven't had the greatest success rate with finding good books I've had good books, but finding great books on the book prizes that I've followed this year, I haven't had the best luck with them. So I figure let's try the Goodreads because people seem to love them. They seem to bring up a lot of conversation about what should and shouldn't be nominated. People do the predictions list. It's all very entertaining. And I'm curious about how many of these books I've even heard of, or if I have any thoughts on them, or if I've read them. And so we're going to do that. I'm going to attempt to screen record for the first time in my life and see if pretty sure it's recording. And let's see how this goes, and then we'll discuss how I think this is gonna work for me. I think I'm probably gonna try to read a couple of them. Maybe we'll go out to the library and see which ones I can even get my hands on. But let us start. So we'll start with fiction. This is probably the one that I would be most interested in, but to be fair, I don't really know all of the categories. Okay, Alice Hoffman, The Invisible Hour. Never heard of it. The Connollys of County Down. Tracy Lang. Nope. Pineapple Street by Jenny Jackson. This one I have heard of, but I don't know anything about it. Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. This I've also heard of. I haven't read anything by Ann Patchett. It is apparently a Reese's book club pick, which means it's probably pretty decent. I find Reese's book club's picks are generally at least semi-entertaining. Jojo Moyes, Someone Else's Shoes. That's one that I would have heard of because it's Jojo Moyes, but I won't read that. Big Swiss by Jen Began. I've heard of that. Evil Eye by Atef Rum. I've heard of, but haven't read. Family Meal, I actually just read Family Meal by Brian Washington, and it was good. Really short, very quick, easy read, following two men. One of them, they were really close growing up, and then one of them moved away, and he's come back, and just kind of about their past and then how to work through their future and kind of reform a relationship. I enjoyed it enough. Okay, Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang. I really enjoyed that. I found it very easy to read. It was a page turner, first page turner I had in a long time, so that's cool. Oh gosh, The Bee Sting by Paul Murray. Look, I have a whole video on that book. Let's just keep going. Blackouts by Justin Torres. I haven't heard of that one. Ellen Hilderbrand, The 5-Star Weekend. Very popular author. I've never read anything by her before. Wellness by Nathan Hill. Haven't heard of. Oh, interesting. Hello Beautiful by Anne Napolitano. I've read. I enjoyed. Definitely a family book about 4 sisters and a boy who kind of things get a little messy and complicated, but I quite enjoyed it. I thought the sibling dynamic was done really well. Burnham Wood by Eleanor Canton. Let's just move on. The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. I recognize that title, but I don't know anything about that book. Mame by Jessica George. That's another book that I saw everywhere at one point, but I have seen nobody talk about it. Everybody hauled it, and then nobody has talked about it since, and I don't know that bodes well for it. But depending on the synopsis, might be one that I feel like picking up. I've seen this book around, Shark Heart, A Love Story by Emily Habeck, and I think that is one of the coolest covers. I think that's awesome, and almost just because of the cover, I would pick that up. The Collected Regrets of Clover. I haven't heard of this one, by Miki Brammer. Don't know about it. Oh, and The Celebrants The Celebrants by Stephen Rowley. I have read this one, and it was okay. It's about a group of friends, very found family, and they celebrate each other's funerals while they're still alive so that they know how everybody feels about them. They're not holding things back and saying all these things that they should have just said to somebody's face. And I enjoyed that one. Again, it was a quick read. I think longer than I thought it was going to be, but pretty quick. So of all the ones on here in the fiction, I would look into Pineapple Street because I have seen it, and I'm now wondering why I haven't picked it up. I feel like it's one that I read the synopsis to at some point, but haven't moved forward to actually reading it. Possibly Evil Eye. This Blackouts, like I said, by Justin Torres, never heard of, so might be worth looking into what that one is about. The Wishing Game, Mame, and Shark Heart. So there's actually a few on this list that I would at least look into the synopsis and see what they're about. But as for the ones that I've read, I mean, I would probably go with what is going to be, I would imagine, a pretty popular decision in Yellowface by R.F. Kuang on this list would definitely be my favorite. I really enjoyed that book. Best fiction. Okay, that was interesting. So not as many books as I would have thought I had heard of, and that I find that exciting because it means that I might come up with a list of books that I wouldn't have picked up typically, and now maybe I'll find something that I absolutely love. The plan was to make a hot chocolate to go with this video, but it's beautiful out, the sun is out, and I live in Washington State now, which means I think when the sun is out, I need to just take advantage of it being bright because I think I'm in for a few months of pretty overcast days, and it just wasn't feeling quite like hot chocolate weather, which is something you will almost never hear me say because I will drink a hot chocolate in a 35-degree day in the middle of the summer. So we're going Spindrift. All right, should we just do this in order? Historical fiction. I'm curious, I wonder how much of this I'll have heard of. I used to read a lot of historical fiction. I quite enjoy it, but I feel like I'm not as up on the historical fiction as I once was. And that initial look through this, I don't know that I've heard of any of these. It might be easier for me to just see which ones I've heard of. Jeanette Walls, I've read from her. I enjoyed. Did she write a nonfiction book? And I think if that's the same author I'm thinking about, I enjoyed her, so would potentially think about reading that one. These are all, when it comes to historical fiction, you really need to read the synopsis and figure out if they're for you because there's just such a gambit of what it is that they're covering. Banyan Moon, I started to read and I didn't like it. Oh my goodness, The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing that name properly. I didn't like that book and I felt so bad about it, but I just didn't enjoy it. Wayward, I read and I enjoyed. It wasn't my favorite, but it was okay. I think the cover is one of the prettiest covers out there, and I'm pretty sure there's a general consensus that the cover is amazing. The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store is one that I think I have tried to get my hands on, but either I couldn't or the wait list at my libraries was really long and I didn't put myself down, and I probably should have, but that was one that I feel like I've been interested in. So when we come to creating kind of maybe a TBR out of this list, that one might be on it if I can get my hands on it. But again, these are all books that I don't really know much about, and because I really enjoy historical fiction, that could be really exciting. Northwoods, I love the title, the cover of that. That's funny. That reminds me of like a 1990s children's like first chapter book sort of cover. I really like that. Very fun. Okay, I guess mystery thriller is next. There might be some categories that I don't even really look at because they're just not ones that I read. Thriller and mystery I do really read quite a bit of, and I have, if not read, I've heard of quite a few of these. So What Lies in the Wood, I did read that. I read about 3 or 4 thriller books for like that had forest or wood atmosphere in the beginning of September, and so I don't remember which one that was, but I do know that I've read this. The Maid's Diary, I'm pretty sure I've read that. All the Dangerous Things by Stacey Willingham. This is one that I've only just seen people talking about. I haven't read it. The Coworker by Frida McFadden. I haven't read that. She's on here twice. She also did The Housemaid's Secret. I don't think I've read that one either. Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q. Sutanto. Haven't read it. I have seen it. I wasn't interested. The Villa by Rachel Hawkins. I read that. I don't remember anything about it. I don't think I loved it. I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Mackay. I DNF'd that one. What's on this line here? None of this is true. I just read. It was fine. I don't think it lived up to the hype for me. I haven't read any of these other ones. I don't read much Karen Slaughter, so I haven't read that. Happiness Falls is on my TBR. I'm on the wait list at the library for that one. Bright Young Women. Oh, who wrote Luckiest Girl Alive? I would consider picking that one up. I didn't hate Luckiest Girl Alive, but it wasn't the best thriller I've ever read. Riley Sager, the only one left. I've only ever read one Riley Sager, and it just didn't compel me to keep picking up his. Is it a boy or is it he or she or they? Well, whichever. Just not somebody that I was overly like, I need to read that. S.A. Cosby. I love S.A. Cosby. I think his Razor Top Tears or Blacktop Wasteland, I think I liked better than All the Sinners Bleed, but I really, really enjoy S.A. Cosby, so that's cool to see. The Last Devil to Die, also Richard Odman. I loved this series. It just makes me so happy. Although this one was a bit of a sadder one, for sure. The River We Remember by William Kent Kruger. I've read This Tender Land, and I think I enjoyed it enough that I would maybe consider picking it up. But again, with some of these, especially with popular books, if I'm going to be on the wait list for 6 months, which sometimes you are at the library, I'm not sure that it's worth it. But, I mean, you're just putting your name down and waiting. If you forget, then you do. And that's fine. But, so again, what I'm discovering is I am not really up on the Goodreads popular books. Maybe it's something that I should pay more attention to. Romance. I don't really read a lot of romance. I read Happy Place by Emily Henry. I had an okay time. I preferred Book Lovers to Happy Place. Yeah, these are just, they're not books that I am opposed to reading, but they aren't ones that I gravitate towards. And I find that some of these, I don't know what it is about romance, but it doesn't always do it for me. And I think because for me, this is so lame, my love story was there was no conflict involved. Like, we met and everything just linearly worked from there. And that to me is a nice, healthy, romantic relationship, is one that isn't super complicated. And so I think for me, reading books about these people that it's actually just toxic, I can't handle it, and I find that is really common in a lot of books. There's something weird flying around in there. And I just get irritated. So I tend to avoid romance a lot of the times unless I'm in a mood. They are good slump books, though, because I find them so easy to read that they can help me in that capacity. Romantasy. Okay, I'm not going to know anything on this list. I've heard of Fourth Wing, because who hasn't, by Rebecca Yarros. Yeah, nothing. Now, I used to love, well, I think for me, I equate romantasy with YA, and I am very far beyond the YA reading in my life. I haven't read YA in a really long time, and even if I think about picking it up, sometimes I'll read a little bit, and it's just not for me anymore, and that's fine, because it's not being marketed towards me. I am far beyond that demographic. So this is a category I will probably not pay much attention to, which is too bad because sometimes it's nice to get out of your comfort zone, but I don't know that romantasy is the way to do it. Fantasy is one that I would consider if I could find one that I enjoyed. Natalie Haynes' Stoneblind, I did read. I am not a big fan of Greek mythology retelling, so not really what it wasn't one that I loved, but I did read it because it's the one that was up for the Women's Prize in Fiction, I think. And then everything else here, I never read Cassandra Clare when she came out. Like, I was late to the party, but I went through a phase where I was a fan of the Shadowhunter world. I thought it was fun. I don't know anything. V.E. Schwab I've read from before. I don't have any interest in picking her stuff up anymore. Liba Dargo, again, I have no interest in picking her stuff up anymore. Samantha Shannon. Look, Samantha Shannon, finish your Bone Season series. I almost refused to read this series, A Day of Fallen Night, until she finishes Bone Season, because I love Bone Season so much, and I've been waiting years for that one to wrap up. But other than that, nothing on here is really Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. I have tried reading Brandon Sanderson, and there's just something about, he's a great writer, but there's something in his storytelling that doesn't connect with me. I really struggle with his books, unfortunately. The Book That Wouldn't Burn. Could be interesting. What is this one? Oh, I didn't realize. Oh, you can get the synopsis without clicking on it. What? Well, that just changes everything. Oh, see, this is part of a trilogy. I try sometimes not to start reading trilogies till they're done. Well, this just changes everything. Okay. Moving on, though. Science fiction. What do we have here? Okay. Well, I don't know much of it what's on here, because again, it's a genre that I can enjoy when I find the right one, but it's not one that I naturally gravitate towards. So I've heard of Justin Cronin, but I haven't heard of any of these except for Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame Ajayi-Renya, and I DNF'd it. I didn't like it at all, which says more about, yeah, it's definitely a me problem because it seems to be very popular. I just really didn't like it. TJ Klune, I'm off the TJ Klune train. I don't like his writing, which I know is possibly very upsetting to some people, but there's something about it that I find he writes for a younger audience than he's marketed towards, and I haven't really enjoyed a lot of the stuff that I've read from him lately, so I'll take a pass. Now, this Pierce Brown, I am interested in his Red Rising series because it seems to get a lot of praise, and I think it's the kind of science fiction that I could enjoy. So the fact that this one's been nominated, which is, what is it, like, isn't it 2 trilogies or something? I'm not sure. Yeah, number 6. I would probably consider picking up Red Rising because it's still so popular 6 books later. The Light Pirate. And it's a climate change book. I am kind of like when COVID happened. Are you allowed to say COVID anymore? There used to be a time when people wouldn't say it. When 2020 happened, so many books were written with that perspective, with that time period, then kind of shoved into the books. And I just got so tired of reading about it. And that is now happening with climate crisis, which obviously I know is very important and we need to be aware of. But I find so many books are just including it, and I'm not saying this is one of those books, but I find so many books now are just including it for the sake of including it, and I'm not a fan of that. Sometimes it's okay for books to be escapisms, and reading about climate catastrophes is not escapism. Horror, I don't read horror. I am a big baby Horror does not interest me. Although I follow a lot of people who do read horror, so I have in fact heard about quite a few of these books. I did try Our Share of Night by Mariana Enrique, and I think it would have been amazing, but we got to a point in the book that just got a little bit more graphic than I was able to deal with. So I had to put it down, which was a little upsetting because I thought the story itself was really interesting. It's one that I would maybe consider trying again, but it's just not a genre that I will find anything in that I would feel too compelled to pick up. Okay, so YA, young adult, fantasy and science fiction, and then young adult fiction. We're just gonna go through these because I won't read any of this young adult stuff. Debut novel. Okay, this is one that I could find interesting. So some of these we've seen before. In Memoriam by Alice Wynne is something that I've heard a lot of people talking about, and I think I would like to pick up. Bandit Queens I read, enjoyed. I think fiction and debut novel are the two categories that I would possibly just try to see which ones I could get my hands on and read, even if I was unsure, just because of the popularity, except for maybe Monstrilio. I've heard what this is about, and okay, it's a literary horror debut, and I wouldn't read that one, I don't think. And is this September House? Wasn't that in the horror ones as well? Haunted House? The last thing I want to read is I don't want to read a haunted house story. Interesting. Okay, so Shark Heart is on here. That's definitely one that I think I would like to look into. The Wishing Game again, Pineapple Street we've talked about. Okay, interesting. Nonfiction. Let's see. I have tried reading Monsters of Fame's Dilemma. I didn't like it. I DNF'd that one. Doppelganger is one I would like to read. I have seen it on like the CBC, which is the Canadian broadcasting company. It mentions it a lot as one of the best-selling Canadian nonfiction books. So that is one that I'd be curious about simply because of the Canada connection there, but I don't really know what it's about, but I've seen it around quite a bit. Eve, The Real Origin of Our Species. What else is on here? I have this, actually. I am on the waitlist for this, The Creative Act, A Way of Being. That's fun. Oh, The Art Thief by Michael Finkel. I read this one. I enjoyed this one quite a bit, actually. I didn't read this one. I listened to this one. I used the audiobook. And it was an interesting story about a man and his partner who steal from museums, but they just collect all the stuff in their house. And so ultimately they have this massive collection in their house because they feel like they appreciate art more than anybody. And I actually really enjoyed it, but I enjoy books about art. I find them to be really interesting. Okay, so nothing on here is grabbing me too much. How School Reform Harms Black Children and How We Heal. Oof, that would be heavy. It would be a really heavy book. I like nonfiction, but I have to really be in the mood for it. We're in the middle of Nonfiction November right now, and I am reading quite a bit of it, so I imagine my next kind of foray into nonfiction won't be for another little bit. Memoir and autobiography. So more nonfiction. And none that are really... I tried reading Becoming Free Indeed. I didn't like it. I did read Spare. And it was an easy read, but very clearly didn't... he doesn't write it. Counting the Cost. I find the Duggar family to be fascinating. I used to watch their reality show, and now that you know kind of more about what was happening, it's wild what can be hidden and how well you can hide behind the truth. It's sad. But again, nothing, I don't want to read the Britney Spears memoir. I don't care enough about that. Yeah, nothing too wild history and biography. I think we're getting kind of to the end of what I would be interested in reading, just in terms of overall genre, humor. Yeah. Cody Rigsby. That's funny. I took his Peloton class like 2 days ago. And he's got a book. That's wild. Okay, and that's the end. Okay. So that is the Goodread Choice Awards. And maybe not the most coherent thing in the world, but I was just really curious about what's being nominated for these awards, because it seems to be quite a bit different from the more, for lack of a better word, literary book prizes that I follow sometimes. And I saw people talking about it and figured, I want to see what it's about. But there are some that I think I would be interested in getting, and I will see if they're available to me at the library. So give me a couple minutes and let's see what I can find. Okay, I'm back. I was able to get my hands on a few of these books, and some of them I'm gonna be waiting for a while. I decided to try I Keep My Exoskeletons to Myself by Marissa Crane, because it seemed a little quirky and unique. I think this was in debut and it was in something else. But this one I actually will be able to get quickly. I am number 1 in line. I also got Shark Heart by Emily Hebeck, number 4 on 2 copies. So I should have that hopefully in a couple of weeks. I was already on hold for Happiness Falls by Angie Kim, number 9 on 7 copies. I've just tried a couple of historical fiction ones. Did you hear about Kitty Carr? I'm number 15 on 4 copies. I did decide to try the thriller by Jessica Knoll, Bright Young Women, number 17 on 5 copies, along with Northwoods. This was historical fiction, I believe, but I'm number 34 on 6 copies. And then last, but certainly not least, The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store. I am number 97 on 19 copies. So I will be waiting for that one for a long time. But these are all physical copies. If I am getting them from the library that I have locally, then I try to get the actual physical book, because that's just the way I prefer to read. I do have access to 3 other library systems, but because of my distance proximity, I really can only get them in ebook form. So I could look and see if any of them would be faster, but these are fine. They'll just sit on my wait list, and when they're ready, I will get a notification to come pick them up. That is the Goodreads Choice Awards. And like I said, I'm kind of excited to see what comes of it. But tell me, do you follow the Goodreads Choice Awards? Are you excited about them? What do you think of them? Anything that you're going to pick up because of them? I'm really curious to know what kind of the overall consensus is on Goodreads, because I don't use it. I use Storygraph to track all my reading. So this is a new one for me, but I like experiencing new things. So thanks for sticking with me. I hope that your reading is going epically well, and maybe the Goodreads will help propel you into some sort of new book that is your all-time favorite, and that is never a bad thing. Bye guys, see you later.